tea time. Welcome everybody, Souldin of the Grimm Brothers here, and it's time for another episode of Tea Time. Now then, for today's tea time, to fit the more dispirited conversation we're going to be having, although it will be filled with a few highs as it were, I am having English breakfast, kind of, except it's a decaf tea. So they just call it decaf because everyone assumes, hey, it's English breakfast, Can you get decaf other kind of tea? Decaf Earl Grey, that'd be weird to have, but you probably can get that. Decaf Orange Pecker, that just sounds wrong saying that like that. I mean, it's supposed to be the highest quality blend, and decaf, that ain't going to be a high quality blend at that point. Not to say it's a bad tea, I've had it before. Curious, because decaf tea has been helping him to sleep, he ended up mixing the decaf tea bags with our regular tea bags, so that caused a lot of confusion. Because I was drinking it thinking, wait, why, trying to sort of edit through the night, and I'm like, wait, why isn't this tea keeping me up? Of course, it was decaf. There's no caffeine. It's not giving me any energy. Any case, PG Tips Decaf Tea says, morning, afternoon, the middle of the night. Hey, any time is right for a delicious decaf tea. So whenever you feel like a cuppa, don't give it a second thought. Just pop in a pyramid tea bag, let the leaves move about, and hey presto, it's your favourite PG Tips tea just without the caffeine. Yep. Yeah, caffeine or energy. It's it's funny. It doesn't taste that much different from an English breakfast. It's just lacks a little bit of oomph to it in the end, but not too bad, Which kind of leads on to the topic. For you see, for today's tea time, I was kind of just thinking, how do I make this channel more popular? And I thought, well, there's a gravy train that everyone jumps onto. So I thought I might as well jump onto it myself, and that would be my top 6 most wanted characters for the upcoming Super Smash Bros. Because as I said, everyone jumps onto it. The moment Smash 5 got announced, which I couldn't really care too much about, or Smash 5 or a port of Smash Bros. For Wii U, we don't know at this point. I'm thinking more of the latter. Everyone sort of jumped on it and started making videos, and I thought, hey, I might as well do one as well, And it may get some attention from that. But as I thought about it, I realised, well, most people are talking about it excited and enthralled, and most people react crazily to it in its Nintendo Directs and all that. And then there's me. Who's been ignoring most of it and has talked with disappointing tones whenever Smash Bros. Has been brought up since almost the start of the channel, really. Well, a little bit after the start of the channel. But there's a small time frame where I talk about the Smash Bros. Series optimistically. So I thought, hey, I should probably explain that. I mean, some people may have seen my Super Smash Bros. Wii U videos where me and Rafi have played it as Grimm Bros. Minis, but I felt maybe it's best that I have some time to go in depth to it myself. I was going to call this the Smashing Disappointment video. However, there's some highs, there's some ups. I could call it the Smashing Full. I think I may just go with smashing. This is basically the thoughts of the Super Smash Bros. Series to me and why I just can't bring the energy to get excited for it too much nowadays. So, here we go then. So it all begins, I can't remember what age I was. I think Super Smash Bros. The N64 came out in 1999? 1998? I believe it was around that time. So Rafi was like barely born at that point. And I was pretty young myself. But I'd played a few video games. I was familiar with Kirby a lot, Pokemon, Mario. Played the SNES quite a bit. We only had the N64 for a short bit of time at this point. And I remember there was a couple video game stores downtown before. One was a vegetable shop, which led into a Mega Drive store. That was pretty cool. And the other was just a small store. I think it was actually the Woolworths which sold the other games at the time. I miss Woolworths. That was a great place. And they went there, and my brothers were getting really excited about this game. I didn't quite understand it at the time, but they said, oh, it's all the Nintendo characters fighting each other, and it has Kirby and Pikachu, and I thought, oh, that's cool, I love Kirby, I love Pikachu. So they bought the game, and it was Super Smash Bros. Got home, started playing it, and oh my gosh, me, Silverwing, and Kyrus loved it from the get-go. I loved it because I could play as Kirby and Pikachu, and it was just an instant sort of delight. It was a new world to me because, of course, I wasn't. I started sort of asking, wait, why isn't like Sonic in this sort of thing? And it's like, oh no, different companies sort of thing. And it's that point I started learning about the companies, who owned what and all that, and getting a good idea on what's what, as it were. You know, I was familiar with Mario and Zelda series, Kirby and Pokemon. Those were familiar. I was also familiar with Star Fox because we had some friends who lived in the village. They owned a shop at the time. And we'd go around and play Star Fox 64 multiplayer where I was always Slippy. So I was familiar with Star Fox as well. Of course, familiar with Luigi and Jigglypuff when I locked them. And of course, familiar with Donkey Kong and Yoshi. But there were quite a few characters I wasn't familiar with. Samus, for instance, never saw Samus before. And until Melee, thought Samus was a robot. Of course, Captain Falcon. Yeah, that's pretty typical, people not knowing who Captain Falcon was at the time. And then there was Nez. Now, this is a very important part for later my problems with the Smash Bros. Series that I came to really come to accept, as well as with Sakurai. Because then there's Nez. I had never heard of Nez, of course. However, of course I've never heard of Nez. Because he was from Earthbound. The Mother series was mostly Japan only, except for Earthbound. But Mother and Earthbound, neither of the two games, ever came out in the UK. Ever came out in Nintendo of Europe at that point. They didn't arrive until we had the Virtual Console on the Wii U. Mother series had never had any form of release in the UK until then. And like I said, this is going to be a problem with me later, but of course I was never going to know who Nez was as a result. In any case, seeing all these cool characters for the first time, along with my favourites, was really exciting. And that kind of ended up building the cornerstone of how I saw the Smash Bros. Series. Of course, there's a lot of cool gameplay to it. It was a really fun gameplay, mechanics and such. It felt very natural. It was also kind of a really good gateway into fighting games. I mean, luckily, in terms of my appreciation for fighting games, I had already begun playing Tekken 2 as one of the earliest of fighting games I played. So I was always more familiar with the more complicated fighting games. Smash Bros. Is a very simple one. But, I gained a real appreciation for the simplicity and all that. And of course, I was a big fan of Kirby, and Smash Bros. Peeled quite a bit off of how Kirby games play. Sakurai being involved in both of them. So it was a very smooth transition. Yeah. But the cornerstone that was built up was you had all these well-known characters with these obscure characters all tied under the banner of Nintendo. And that is what I ended up focused on, particularly as I ended up learning more about the Nintendo series as I got older. Years later, the GameCube was coming about, and it launched. We didn't get it, but on that Christmas, Mum and Dad told us in the new room they'd built, the new little study room, which would later become this game room. They told us we have one last present by the TV in the study. We rushed to it, and there it was, the GameCube with Super Smash Bros. Melee, along with Luigi's Mansion as well. And of course we went nuts over that, playing Super Smash Bros. Melee, and at that point, that was really the big sort of multiplayer moment, the biggest sort of multiplayer moment really, because at that point Rafi was playing games at that point now, so it was all four brothers playing Super Smash Bros. Melee together, and that was amazing. Even more amazing than the gameplay, which was so good. It was just such an improvement of everything Smash Bros. There's a simple charm to the original Super Smash Bros. I feel is worth going back to play, but Super Smash Bros. Melee is a huge improvement. It builds upon everything so well. But kind of what ended up impacting me a lot more was the trophies, because in the trophies I got history information on all things Nintendo. And that was enthralling, finding out these characters and, all the sort of clues and such. And, it started making me think, oh, who else could be in Smash Bros? By Super Smash Bros. There was, of course, characters I wanted. I saw the roster and thought, why isn't Bowser in this? Why isn't King Dedede? A lot of people in the original Smash Bros., there was a rumour that Wario was the unlockable character. And then suddenly Nez pops up and you're like, who the heck is Nez? And, of course, Kirby fan, I wanted King Dedede and Meta Knight in the game. But with the trophies, my knowledge of who I wanted in Smash Bros. Just blew up in proportion. And of course, for me, this was pre-internet days. The internet was around, but I didn't have the internet until, I was year 10 of school, so I was 16. Year 11. Yeah, I was 16 when I got the internet in our household. We didn't have that until then. So my information on Nintendo came from Nintendo gaming magazines, and of course, the sort of games where they actually showed off the information. And so Super Smash Bros. Melee, that's where I got all this information, all these characters and who I wanted in Smash Bros. Expanded. And I thought, wow, it'd be really cool if they showed off this character and this character and that character. Really cool for them to do that sort of thing and, sort of to highlight the characters. I never knew Ice Climbers before, and it was, this is where it began to set. It's Super Smash Bros. people didn't know Ice Climbers. And, you know, with Fire Emblem, I thought, whilst of course we later learned that they had already planned, I thought, oh, it's because they put Marth and Roy from Fire Emblem into Smash Brothers that they ended up, and they were popular, that they released the series overseas for the first time. Of course, that's not the case. They'd already planned to release Fire Emblem overseas, and it was actually Advance Wars' success which had more of an impact than Marth and Roy's popularity in Melee. However, it was the idea of it, and seeing how people suddenly talked about Ice Climbers. They talked about Game & Watch. You know, they talked about these characters that you would never have seen talked about before. They talked about Nez, who had never even heard of before, and Captain Falcon. And suddenly there was F-Zero GX, and I could point, oh, that's the game Captain Falcon's from. Metroid Prime was like, oh, that's the game Samus is from. That's the game Samus is from. It's back. And I learned of it because I knew, because all I needed to know was 1 or 2 characters to get into Smash Bros. And then all the other characters I learned because they were in Smash Bros. It wasn't a case of Smash Bros. Being popular because of all the characters in it. Smash Bros. Only needed 1 or 2 characters to be popular. And then it was backed up by amazing gameplay and all-round multiplayer fun. The key to the success of Smash Bros. Is that after that, it made other series popular. Because it allowed people to learn about other series, both in the playable roster and to a lesser extent within the trophies and information they reveal. This was also the start of my disappointment though. Because whilst it was less noticeable with the likes of Luigi and Jigglypuff, coming face to face with Ganondorf, having the moveset of Captain Falcon, really brought to light the issues of clones in Smash Bros. And I was a fan of Tekken 2, which Tekken 1 and 2 were notorious for having clone characters. Like, lots of the roster was cloned characters. Tekken 2 started to branch them off a bit, but still, they were sort of clone, semi-clone sort of thing. But, you know, it started to realise, but wait. But the thing is, Tekken was an original IP, and a lot of the clone characters related to the characters they were clones of. With Smash Bros, though, I was seeing it as a history thing. And I guess this was the cornerstone where I actually began to enjoy history as a lesson. I didn't really enjoy history until I got to secondary school. But, you know, good teachers are always going to help you out with that. I used to enjoy science, but secondary school, I killed that off because the science teachers just weren't good enough for me, as it were. my love of history started to, I guess, bloom from that. And I started to wonder, why isn't Ganondorf reflected properly? With stuff like the mention of Nez having PK Rockin', but there was no PK Rockin' attack, you know, why isn't he reflected properly? Captain Falcon being a racer, but it's like, but, you know, he's got all these things, he's like a gun on his belt, like, when does he do these moves in the sort of series sort of thing? And it really began to make me, and, you know, in particular, along with the Ganondorf problem, that was, of course, a big situation of, wait, why hasn't he got his own moveset? Why is he a Captain Falcon clone? That doesn't seem, you know, for a series that is promoting these characters, the representation to get people into the series, and promoting the history of Nintendo, they don't seem to have, you know, placed him in all too well. But another problem, which people rarely bring up, is Mario. Mario in the original Super Smash Bros. Had a giant fist attack. That was from Super Mario 64. That made perfect sense. Then they gave him a generic fire punch, which he didn't have in any game until after Melee with Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, which is more a case of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga being inspired by Melee. That made me look back onto DK and realising DK's moveset was basically made up. Like, he didn't have his roll, he didn't have any barrel throws, and it's only because later series have started to take from what he did in Smash Bros. And incorporate into their series that they became part of DK's moveset. Hindsight sort of thing. And I felt that really odd. However, luckily those seeds of doubt didn't affect me in the case of Super Smash Bros. Brawl. And I'm going to begin now after taking a sip of my decaf tea. I'll just have that quickly. Sadly, this is going to go over the 15-minute mark. That's annoying. Not much really to say about it, because of course decaf tea, it tastes much like English breakfast. A little bit less of a kick. Little slight sort of difference in aftertaste, but barely noticeable unless you're really focusing on it. You know, you could pick it up, start drinking it, and you think, oh, it's just, you know, oh, just regular tea. You know, you don't notice it until unless you actually stop and sort of think about it. But, you know, it tastes good because, of course, it's English breakfast, but this isn't going to perk me up with any energy that I need. Nan and Grandad had the internet before we did at this house. You know, they had it a couple of years before. And it was during the... You know, I didn't know when E3 started sort of thing, but it was during school that I browsed. We got off some free time on the IT, and I suddenly saw a headline saying Solid Snake in next Smash Bros. And I thought, that must be wrong. So I went home, went to Nan and Granddad's house, sort of clicked on the same link, and that played the Super Smash Bros. Brawl trailer, and oh my gosh, that blew my mind. That was one of the most exciting thing I'd seen. That was absolutely mind-blowing. And of course, there was Pit, and I'm like, I know him. He's very different. But I remembered the trophy from Melee, and I thought, that's another obscure character. That's really cool. And, you know, that'll be promoting that series. Maybe that series will make a comeback. Took a while for that to happen, but hey, it did. You know, and I learned of Pit because of Super Smash Bros. And Super Smash Bros. Brawl started, and oh gosh, we soon got the internet after that, and I was on the downstairs computer checking the Super Smash Bros. Dojo page every day. When Sonic was announced for Smash, I went absolutely insane. Now, in hindsight, I have disagreements with the inclusion of third-party characters in Super Smash Bros., but that's more, you know, again, that's only later that I felt it started to detract from the series' focus. But then again, it felt like I was really at odds with what the series was focused on. Mainly because, to me, Super Smash Bros. Was always supposed to be a series focused on the promotion of all Nintendo series and the showcasing of Nintendo's long history. Turns out, it's not quite so for that purpose. But nevertheless, Super Smash Bros. Brawl was my hype moment. It was when I started making a top 10 list and finding out all these sort of characters, sort of thinking, oh, this would be cool. I thought, oh, this character makes a lot of sense. And it's also where I started to think about what characters would make a lot of sense in terms of being added to the roster. You know, who wasn't, not just who I'd want, but who would actually make, you know, who would actually be choices which, like, they deserve to be in Smash Brothers. You know, I don't have a huge love for Crystal, but at that time it felt like, well, Crystal would be a character, a Star Fox representative with a unique moveset, and Star Fox was pretty big at the time, and Crystal was appeared in a second game of Star Fox Assault out soon. So I thought, you know what, okay, I'd put her in a sort of top 10 list, you know. Tingle was a big Legend of Zelda character who was later went on to have his own games in the DS line. So I thought, oh, it makes sense to suggest him to be a bigger character. And I started forming a top 10 list on that basis. Not just what I want, but also in terms of who should be in Smash Bros. Of course, you know, as with Metroid being big, there was a certain character who was, of course, on my list, that being Ridley. And the fact that Ridley keeps being shot down is again yet another point of contention, given some of the past examples of why that makes no sense. In any case, Smash Bros. Brawl was the big hype moment. I was eagerly anticipating it. I got so eagerly anticipated I went to pick it up on the wrong day because I checked out the American website date. It took ages to come out in the UK and the rest of Europe, but it eventually did arrive. Super Smash Bros. Brawl is my fourth favourite video game of all time. I love that game. It's my favourite Wii game, of which Wii being my favourite video game system of all time. I adore Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Like, gameplay-wise, I think it's still actually the best. Of course, tripping is a problem, but in terms of the pacing and such, I think it works, particularly with the stages they've designed. The stages are chaotic and strong, but because of the slower pace, you can avoid most of the obstacles, so it doesn't prove irritating in any way. Even Big Blue is more manageable, I feel, within Brawl than it is Melee, because of the general better control of the pacing. The Subspace Emissary was, of course, amazing. They had assist trophies to promote even more of the characters, and stickers to promote even more of the characters. Super Smash Bros. Brawl, to me, whilst of course there was again still gameplay problems, they have the clones still, not fully utilising their originality. Ganondorf was still a clone. They added in Lucas and Wolf as cloned characters. Though I will say I actually love playing as Wolf. You know, there's problems with it, I can admit that, but it just felt like such a grand showcasing the history of Nintendo. It felt like the best in terms of its overall presentation to me. And whilst I've really, at that point I was thinking, what they only now need to truly do is focus on the accuracy of the series. I'd obviously had characters I wanted in, it was around the hype for Super Smash Bros. Brawl that I really got into wanting Lip for Super Smash Bros. And, who's a pretty obscure character, but Lipstick was my favourite item, and I was like, the character from this series should be in the game. They don't even have a puzzle rep anyway, so Lip should be in the game. A few of the other characters, and like I was like, when I started making the top 10 list, I had King Dedede on it, and of course then he gets announced, and it's like, oh well, that was quick. Super Smash Bros. Brawl was the biggest moment. And I think it's kind of the problem there. Super Smash Bros. Brawl had elevated my love for the series to insane hypes. I got into fanfiction through it and loved the community of fanfiction internet, which I was involved with the Super Smash Bros. Brawl community. I made friends through Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Super Smash Bros. Brawl became such a huge cornerstone of my life. And that's the problem. Because Super Smash Bros. For Wii U was such a grand disappointment, so that when I fell from the high graces of Super Smash Bros. Brawl, I hit the ground hard. Problems sort of emerged when Rafi warned me in advance that, oh, the 3DS, it being on the 3DS as well was going to be a problem. I didn't think it would be. Of course, this eventually led to the removal of Ice Climbers, which irritated me to the end, seeing a series representation get removed. This also led to the transformations being separate characters, which I felt was a huge step back, particularly in the accuracy of representation for the characters. Suddenly, Pokemon Trainer, instead of being a unique character, was just Charizard on his own, a very overrated character and one who made no sense to me. We had a Gen 1 Pokemon representative, that was Pikachu. We already had Jigglypuff. We didn't need a third, really. And, you know, problems really started to come to light there. Sheik and Zelda being separated, Sheik kind of outlasting her role anyway, given she hadn't appeared in any recent Zelda games. Ganondorf still being a clone. Just the character roster generally sort of disagreeing with Mii's being customizable characters, but then not being able to be used online. The customizable function, but never really being fully utilized. Stages with a slightly quicker pace meant a lot of the stage hazards were now, unlike in Brawl where you could expect and anticipate them a lot better, were now just too destructive. Master Ball Pokemon, the gosh darn legendary frequency rate and overpowered assist trophies meant that for once we were actually turning off a lot of items which we had never had to do before. Smash Tour felt like such a lackluster addition, and there was a lack of Subspace Emissary. The events just weren't as fun. And the presentation just felt like everything felt a bit half-hearted, really, with Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. I feel like I should have left more time to really expand it, but I guess that's really the culmination of what I can feel about it. I was such a high point with Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and then Super Smash Bros. Wii U was such a low point. The historical accuracy of things just at this point, with Ganondorf being a clone yet again, I just felt like they were never really going to pay too much attention to the accuracy thing. And the fact that clones still kept being added. Dr. Mario returned. That was a huge slap. And don't bring up Dark Pit to Rafi. He gets really angry about that because he knew the potential of Dark Pit to being his own character. And instead he's just shipped in there as a clone. It's doing a disservice to the characters. And even more annoying is the two-sided nature of having Alf be a costume swap, but apparently Dark Pit, Lucina, and Dr. Mario are somehow warranting of being their own slots. Character roster, oh gosh. Well, they don't have Ridley in it for one, for reasons apparently because he wouldn't be accurate to himself if he wasn't the size. And yet Ganondorf for some reason can be going about using Falcon Punch all the time, but hey, that's okay, because fans would be disappointed if his moveset went away. Yeah, funny enough, although Ganondorf is my main in both Brawl and Super Smash Bros. Wii U, Ganondorf's moveset is just a slower version of Captain Falcon's. I mean, there are ways you could retain it with a different character, who I will suggest later in a separate tea time, but you kind of should have been making Ganondorf be Ganondorf, more so than anything. This two-sided nature, I feel, it's when I really sort of felt cracks in it all, The accuracy just wasn't up to par. The DLC with adding just further clones and further third-party characters and moving away from this focus of showing off the Nintendo characters. Felt there were so many obscure Nintendo characters that could get some love and attention, and they were mostly ignored, and in favour of, hey, let's add in these third-party characters. I had high hopes. So, I was nuts for that community on Miiverse. Super Smash Bros. Wii U was how I got into the Miiverse community to begin with. I only really got back into it thanks to Namco's Pokemon Miiverse Adventure and the Pokemon Yellow video game series. And like I said, Super Smash Bros. Brawl such a high to fall so low, which is why I don't have much hopes. At this point, I feel the character roster has kind of been screwed over quite a bit. There's an absurd amount of Mario characters, and I kind of preferred it when there was a better proportion of characters. Mario, Zelda, and Fire Emblem have tons, and Pokemon's probably going to get another. And it's transformations being separate, all that sort of stuff. I'm just too used to disappointment now with everything that's Super Smash Bros. Wii U just ended, was so hyped at first, but just slowly became more and more disappointments coming out one after the other. and again and again and again. And then when I got the game, it just didn't grab our attention nearly as long. So we'd played Melee and Brawl for ages, but we barely pick out Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. When we have friends around, it's usually a good go-to game, but it's just not really got the heart to it, I feel. So that's why I talk about Super Smash Bros., this upcoming one, in such a low tone with several sighs. I'm still going to make my sort of top 6 characters of Smash Bros., but, you know, these would be the ones that really grab my attention. But unless things happen in terms of the stages and the core game itself, the additionals and modes, it's going to be hard to truly get me invested in the series again. But hey, it's worth talking about because everyone else is talking about it. I might as well chip in my own thoughts. Any case, I hope you all enjoyed this dispirited tea time. And cheer everyone!